2023 was a heck of a year for real estate up here in Boise, Idaho. But you may be asking yourself, okay, where does this take us in 2024? What should we expect to happen? Is everything going to come crashing and burning down? Are we going to see prices skyrocket? What is going to happen? And what does that mean for you and your family if you're thinking about making a move here to the Boise, Idaho area? Today in this video, I'm going to try and give you some context to answer those questions right there. So if you're into that, go ahead and stay tuned because we're going to get into it right now. There's a reason why real estate is the #1 wealth builder in our country. And when you're getting a loan, there's also a reason why these major banks are willing to give you 97% of that home purchase price. And they're willing to put that risk up there because they know in the long term, it'll all work out for them. They know and trust real estate that much. But over the long term, even though real estate has always proven to go up, if you zoom in on that graph of it going up over time, you're gonna see that it's not a completely straight line. There are gonna be some peaks, some valleys, there's gonna be all sorts of bumps kind of up and down. And it's safe to say the end of 2022 and most of 2023 was kind of that same idea. It was up and down. We had a pretty big correction up here in the Boise, Idaho area, but as 2023 started to unfold, we actually got out of that correction quite a bit and we're back on a course that we can actually project out a little bit. In today's video, I'm gonna give you a quick recap of everything that happened to get us to the market that happened in 2023, but I'm also gonna spend the majority of the time at the end talking about what I think is gonna happen in 2024, what that means for you, and then I'm gonna spend some time talking about Boise, Idaho and this market in particular, and what makes it strong and what should we expect to see over the next 5, 10, 15 years. To get started, I wanna talk about 3 things that led us to the market that we experienced here in 2023. The first of which being something that I'm sure you've been hearing about all throughout the year, the rising inflation and the interest rates that happen because of that. I'm not a professional economist, so I'm not gonna get too into why interest rates change, what the Fed's doing, what inflation is, how we got here, what's going on. That's not my realm of expertise. But what I can tell you is that inflation is what made the Fed raise that lending rate all throughout the year pretty drastically. And mortgage rates, they come as a byproduct of that rate. So when the Fed was raising rates, they were in theory also raising mortgage rates as they went. But it's important to know that this was happening because of the entire economy. There were wars going on. We were recovering from a pandemic. All sorts of stuff was happening, but it wasn't the housing market that was causing the economic struggles. This is the main reason why myself and a lot of people that I work with and trust would look at the people going out on YouTube, just like I'm doing with you right now, but the doomsdayers, the people saying everything's gonna come crashing down, the overall just fear mongers, why they were so wrong when they were comparing this to 2008. Because in 2008, everything was caused by the housing market. The housing market crashed, which then led the economy to crash. In this last couple of years, the economy is what was struggling and the housing market started to struggle as a byproduct or a consequence of the economy struggling. And again, that's important to realize because that's how we can look forward and say, okay, is the real estate market going to stay healthy? And I 100% believe wholeheartedly that that answer is yes. But regardless of that, interest rates took a big spike over the last couple of years. To give you some specifics, in March of 2022, a 30-year conventional fixed rate mortgage had a rate of around 3.75%. Now let's fast forward to the end of 2022, which was just about 8 months later, and that same 30-year fixed rate mortgage had a rate of 7.1%. That is an insane jump in such a small period of time. And to better illustrate this, I want to look at it as a monthly payment. At the 3.75 rate, if you were buying a $425,000 home, putting around 20% down, you'd be looking at a monthly payment of around $1,920. But fast forward to that higher rate of 7.1, that exact same house, same price, same down payment would get you a monthly payment of $2,630. That is a difference of around $700 every single month that you would have to pay purely because your interest rate went up. Nothing else changed in the market. Imagine being a buyer in that time frame. Maybe you're at the max of your pre-approval. Maybe you're already nervous about buying your first home or moving across the country. Whatever it was, this rapid rise in interest rates really caused a shock in the market, which had people start to second guess is this the right time for me to make a purchase? And in that example, I just said that everything stayed the same except for the interest rate, but along with this, at that same time, we've been dealing with record high home prices throughout the country, but especially here in the Boise, Idaho area. To give some examples, back in 2018, the median home price in Ada County, so think Boise, Meridian, Eagle, Kuna, kind of that part of town, was around $250,000 to $260,000. Fast forward to January of 2020, and that median home price was now up to $410,000, which is a pretty big jump in around 18 months. But the crazy part is we were just getting started. By May of 2022, that median house price was all the way up at $735,000. So at the same time where interest rates were rising pretty rapidly, home prices were also continuing to rise. So imagine you're at the beginning of 2022 and you're at around a 3% interest rate. You can get a home for, let's say, $500,000. Fast forward about 6 months, your interest rate now has doubled, but that home also went up in price about $50,000. All of that together really put a constriction on buyers and their ability, but also their interest in buying homes. This is what led to the market kind of shifting from a really strong seller's market that we saw during the pandemic, kind of 2019 to 2021, into a little bit more of a balanced, if not a buyer's market throughout most of 2022 at the end and into 2023. And you would think as things started to shift and things started to correct because interest rates went up, you heard a lot of realtors, loan officers, everybody out there saying like, hey, buyers, come on, this is your chance. This is your chance to buy something because the sellers don't have all the power. And there was some truth in that. But you also have to acknowledge that for the prior few years at this point, buyers had just been beaten down on home after home after home. In the pandemic, we were seeing the frenzy of 10 to 20% over asking was pretty standard. People were waiving inspections. People didn't need the appraisal to be covered. All sorts of craziness was happening. So really well-qualified buyers were losing out on homes that they were making competitive offers on. So again, put yourself in those buyers' shoes. You've now been beat down for 2 years trying to buy a home. You've seen housing prices just skyrocket. And now the interest rates, which was the one thing that was still making it appealing, also are going up. All of those together is what led, as we transitioned into 2023, to the housing market really hitting a wall. And this led to a couple of issues in 2023. The first of which being the number of people that moved, actual people that bought or sold a home in the entire country, but here in Boise, dropped significantly. This decrease in activity really grinded everything to a halt because if nobody's making a move, nobody feels confident to make the move. And when everybody feels unconfident, everything kind of comes to a standstill. And with that decrease in kind of the velocity of the market, that's where we saw an already existing inventory issue that I know you've heard about a lot, so I'm not going to harp on it a ton. We never had enough homes for sale up here. As everything kind of changed and everybody got more uncertain, sellers just were less confident in actually selling their home and moving into another one. And with all of this, we really did have a correction up here in Boise. From that peak in mid 2022, where our median home price was around $735,000, we started to see things start to creep back down. And we kind of hit the bottom of that correction towards the end of Q1 in 2023. So let's say around March, where the median house price was now down at $560,000. So in a little less than a year, we saw that median home price drop by around $150,000. That is a massive correction and is a big reason why I feel confident in saying as we continue to grow, our market is gonna bounce back. If we hadn't felt that correction yet, I would be with you. It's bound to happen at some point. But we just earlier this year saw our market correct down around 20 to 25%. That is a massive correction that you just don't see all that often. Now, fast forward to today, the median home price from March, where kind of the bottom of the correction was at $560. Today, that median house price is back up around $600,000. So in 2023, where the real estate market felt like it was coming down, everybody was nervous, all sorts of crazy stuff was happening. Here in Boise, we actually saw the market start to pick back up, and you saw about 5 to 7% appreciation. And that was happening as throughout most of this year, all the way up to the end of October, interest rates didn't stop rising. They hit their peak at towards the end of October of just under 8%. And fast forward to today where it's mid-December, that interest rate just dropped below 7%. So we're starting to see those rates come back down a little bit, which is gonna lead to some pretty good things for the health of our real estate market. Just wanted to slide in here real quick and give you a reminder that I am a local agent up here in the Boise, Idaho area. So whether you're making a move in 9 days, 9 months, whatever it is, call, text, email, if there's a way that I can help, I would absolutely love to. So all my information is down in the description below. Feel free, reach out, whatever I can do to help, I would love to. Let's get back into it. And this is where I want to shift focus and start to look into the future a little bit at what is actually going to happen in 2024. Of course, little disclaimer, I don't have a crystal ball. I didn't see that pandemic coming. I didn't see home prices tripling in the matter of a couple of years. I didn't see in 2022 interest rates to just completely take off and go through the roof. But let me bring you in on a little bit of a secret. All of the companies, economists, everybody out there, they're all working with the same data, and none of them actually know what's gonna happen either. All that I can say is, as somebody who works in this field and works in the real estate market day in and day out, and I am a data nerd and I love this stuff, this is what I'm seeing, and this is how I'm making kind of forecasts for myself, my clients, but again, for my wife and I, when we're looking at our portfolio. And there are 4 major projections that I want to talk about in 2024. The first of which being what I think is a pretty easy kind of slam dunk that this one is going to come to fruition, is just we're going to see a pretty big rise in the number of transactions that happen in the market. Again, like I said earlier in the video, across the country, we typically always have around the same number of people move. So we have buyers and sellers, people moving all over the country for all sorts of reasons. In 2023, we saw the lowest number of transactions that we've seen in quite some time. So just naturally, when it starts to go off like that, you're gonna revert to the mean a little bit. So we're gonna see a rise in the number of transactions, and that velocity in the market is gonna feel like things are picking up again. And that increased velocity in the housing market leads into my second prediction for 2024, and that's that we're gonna see a spike in inventory of homes for sale. Now, I don't think all of a sudden we're gonna be flooded with homes and we're gonna have too much supply for the demand, but I do think that we've had such low inventory here in the Valley for the last 5 years. Over the last year, we thought that that would start to creep up because people were ready to cash out. They needed to go make a move. They'd recovered from the pandemic, all sorts of different reasons. But because of everything that happened, we actually saw the inverse happen and less homes came on the market in 2023. That just can't stand for the foreseeable future. People still need to move for jobs. They're still gonna have kids and need bigger homes. They're gonna have kids go off to college and want smaller homes. Whatever the reason is, there are just people that are gonna have to move. So as the velocity of the market picks up a little bit and those buyers come back into the market because of the lower interest rates, we're gonna see more people ready to put their house on the market, which is gonna increase the options out there for the buyers. Now, I do wanna be clear here, especially in Boise, we have been so constricted on inventory for so long that even if this happens, we're not gonna be flush with homes, which means that I do still see, and this is my third prediction for next year, is that our housing market is going to appreciate at a modest amount. I don't think that we're gonna hit back in those pandemic numbers of around 30% appreciation, but I do think that we have already seen the bottom of our correction. And with all of these factors in place, we're gonna see around a 5 to 7% growth in housing prices over the next year. And this is one of those measures that if you look it up online, you're gonna find everybody from Redfin and Zillow to Goldman Sachs to Merrill Lynch, NAR, the National Association of Realtors, they all have their economists that put out their projections, and they'll range quite a bit. Some people think it's gonna stay pretty consistent, maybe drop about a 0.5%. There's also ones out there that think it's actually gonna bounce back with a vengeance and grow by 11 or 12%. Nobody actually knows what's gonna happen, but I do think that it's safe to assume that over the next year, it's not gonna go down unless something happens in the overall economy that honestly would be a bigger concern to us. And again, all behind everything that we've talked about for the last year and into this next year are those darn interest rates. And my last big projection for next year is that I do think interest rates are going to keep coming down. Most of the lenders out there, and again, those economists, everybody who analyzes these things, their forecast pretty much across the board show interest rates continuing to drop next year. Some of them think that they're going to stay in kind of like the mid to high sixes. There's some that believe that by the end of 2024, we're going to see interest rates around the 5.75 mark. So I don't know exactly where these rates are going to go. We've heard from the Fed in their December meeting that they think inflation is getting under control and we should expect some cuts to their rate throughout the next year. I've seen headlines that say it'll happen 4 times, 6 times. Whatever it is, if they start to cut those rates, mortgage rates will follow. So I think it's safe to assume that rates are going to drop over the next year. Now, what do you do with that? Of course, there's 2 major perspectives here. Those of you that are looking to buy a home, build a home, kind of relocate here to the area, and those of you who are looking at, hey, I need to sell my home, when's the best time for that? You hear from realtors all the time, it's always a good time to buy and sell. I'm not gonna give you that bullshit. This is not always the perfect time for you to make a move, but what I can tell you is that there are pros and cons in every single market for both sides, and there's a way to capitalize on both. So as a buyer, what I want you to be thinking about is if you're looking to build a home, 1, remember that you can rate lock for an extended period of time depending on what your lender allows, but you don't have to lock your rate until you're towards closing. So let's say that your custom build is about a year out. Your lender may not be willing to lock the rate quite that far in advance, but if they are, a lot of times they'll let you float down the rate one time. So a couple of weeks before closing, or if rates continue to drop, you can kind of readjust down. But what I would really recommend is any lenders that you're talking with, ask them directly, hey, if I buy a home and we're gonna be around a 7% rate, what happens if rates are 5.5 in a year and a half? Am I gonna have to pay you for a refinance? Are you all allowing me as your current customer to refinance in a certain amount of time completely free? What is that gonna look like? Because there are a lot of programs out there right now where they're anticipating this and using it as a way to earn your business. And this is even more important for people who might not be looking at new construction. If you're ready to make the move now and you're thinking about moving early in 2024, where rates may not have reacted yet, don't be too scared about locking in the rate that they're currently at. It's much better than it was a few months ago, so you've already won a little bit. But again, have that same conversation with your lender that if things do change a lot in the first 6 months that I'm there, what can I do about that? Will you all do something to help me? Will you help me refinance? What is the goal? And then on the sell side, all of this is fantastic news for people who are selling a home in 2024. This is because increased velocity, increased buyers in the market, all of these things are pro seller. Increased demand will be better for you, and that's where we see prices go up. The main concern would be that we get so much inventory flooding the market that now supply has outpaced demand. But I can tell you, at least here in my local market, we've got a long way to go to get there. There are numbers floating around there, and this is more on the new construction side, that even with all of the homes that are currently available in the Boise area, homes that are owned, rented, under construction, everything, we are still hundreds of thousands of homes short for the population that we see growing and just the overall demand. So even if all these homes come to market for the resale, we need our builders to really pick up the number of homes that they're gonna be building to start to close that inventory gap really at all. And I didn't talk a lot about new construction where I see that going over the next year or two, but I'll do a later video on that. But that's important to know is that we aren't close enough to where you need to be worried about there being too many homes for sale. Now, to wrap up, I want to give you a few insights into why I'm really confident in the Boise, Idaho market and why I think if you're thinking about making a move up here, this is still a great time. You have not missed the boat. You are not going to be buying at the peak of the Boise market, anything like that. The first of which being in 2023, we saw the values correct, but they've started to stay firm and began to grow again. Like I said at the beginning of the video, if we didn't see that correction, I'd be a little bit more worried about where things are going because every bubble will burst. But our bubble did burst a little bit. There are some reasons for this. We were super undervalued for so long. In 2018, our market was worth more than a $250,000 home. So some of that crazy appreciation that we saw was just bound to happen. And then with the pandemic, that appreciation just kept going. It was like throwing gasoline on a fire. And that's where that correction kind of brought things back down to a more reasonable level. But over the next few years, I think real estate here in the area is still gonna be a killer investment. And like I said, a big reason for that is just the lack of inventory and total homes that we have in our valley. Until we hit a point where there's just an abundant supply and people have all sorts of different options, they can move anywhere that they'd like, we're really not going to see the prices start to constrict at all, because there will still be more people that want a home than homes for sale. That's just a recipe for prices to go up. And this leads into the last two things that are giving me a lot of confidence in our market. The first of which being that we are still a top relocation destination pretty much across the board. And this is because we can offer a lifestyle up here with our different types of activities, the way that our state is set up, all of these different things that make living here in the Boise, Idaho area one of the best places that you can live, and why when you visited, you've had family visit, you've heard about it, people get sucked in and they just don't leave. And with that lifestyle component, we're talking about the West Coast, the mountain ranges, all of this. Compared to a lot of the West Coast towns, Boise is still very relatively affordable. We don't always feel that once we've been here for a while because we're just seeing things go up, but compared to a lot of the really appealing destinations on the West Coast, Boise is still a pretty good deal for people. When they fall in love with Denver and the Rocky Mountains, but they look at the home prices and then they look up here and see a similar lifestyle, but they can save 20 to 30% on their home, they're gonna choose here. Same thing in Seattle. When they fall in love with that town, but they get out there and they look and say, I didn't know I was gonna have to spend $2 million on a home. They start to look at Boise and they fall in love for the similar reasons. We really are the last West Coast destination kind of set up like this with a bigger town that is still at an affordable price point, but who knows how long that'll be. And of course, I'm not talking about pure budget living. If you're looking for the cheapest home or the most bang for your buck, that's where you want to look at the Midwest, the Southeast. You're gonna want to look at certain parts of Texas. That's not what you're gonna find here. But that's not what you're looking for. You're looking for that high level of lifestyle and that quality of life. And there's a reason that people still want to move here, regardless of what's been happening with the values. Overall, I'm sure it came through a little bit. I'm a little bit biased. I love living here in the Boise, Idaho area. And of course, I'm in real estate. I have a lot of confidence in the real estate market. But I hope that this walked you through a little bit of how we got to where we are and then where we should see things start to go. If you have any specific questions about your situation, all of my information is down in the description below. So shoot me a text, shoot me an email. If there's a way that I can help you answer even one question about your journey up here to Boise, I would absolutely love to. And for those of you that made it this far into the video, if there was anything that really stood out to you, anything that you thought I missed, or things that you just flat out disagree with, drop a comment below. I would love to start that discussion so that we can figure out who might be a little bit more right than the other. And then a year from now, we can come back and one of us can rub it in a little bit more. But until then, I hope that you enjoyed. I hope that we answered at least one more question to help you on your journey, and I'll see you all on the next one.